So, hi everybody. As you can probably see from the shared screen, my name is Jamie Simmons. I'm the documentation manager here at Authorit, and I'll be giving most of today's presentation. I am also joined by Peter Vellings, Abe Chokshe, and Julie Monk, who are some of my co-workers. Abe will be handling the Q&A today, so we have a Q&A section. Please submit questions as they come to you. If they don't pop up right away, don't panic. Abe's just curating those to. It just needs his approval before they come through, but they will come through shortly as he sees them. Cool. So today we'll be discussing new word enhancements. So we'll be discussing all the main features coming up in our next release, 2025 R4, which you can expect very soon. Some of those include new word enhancements, particularly macro support, which I'll be excited to demonstrate, some Magellan Help Center improvements and changes, an upgrade for the connection for author, so moving away from the traditional RDP, and some new translation endpoints for the AIT API. As you may have picked up on, those first 2 points, they apply to everybody. Those second two, they're really only for Authorit Cloud customers. They don't really apply to Author on premises. So if you'd like to check out of the webinar after those, if you're on premises, so don't want to hang around for those last 2 bits, no problem. You're quite welcome to leave at that stage. I'll try to take questions at the end of each section to kind of facilitate that. So we should have the time today. So I should have the time today to take the questions at the end of each section rather than leave them all at the end. All right. First up, new word enhancements in 2025 R4. So the biggest enhancement for new word in the upcoming release is macro support. Adding macros to a new word publication is relatively easy. That's all the steps you see on screen. You basically take the word template that you use to publish, turn it into a .m, add some word macros to it, published a new word, and then you have now published a .m, a Word document that has those macros built in. Some quick notes. So obviously, once you complete this, your published output will be a .m file rather than a .x. That's because .x cannot have macros. The macros can only run after you open the Word document. So that means they won't work for Word to PDF documents, since obviously the PDF is created before you get a chance to open the Word doc. So if you do need these changes for a PDF and you're using Word to PDF, you'll need to publish the Word doc, run the macros, then print to PDF. You can still use the .m template to publish to Word to PDF though. I recommend setting up your macros to run automatically when the document is opened, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. And if there are some common macros that keep coming up, we'll add those to the KC. All right, so just going to give a quick demo of what you see on screen. So right now, obviously, we are in Authorit Cloud. And the first thing I'm going to do is track down the Word template that we use for publishing to New Word. If you attended the What's New in New Word webinar, this folder name will be very familiar to you, and so will the template. It's the exact same ones. Great. And off screen, I'm going to open up a different. All right, so first thing we're going to do is go File, Save As, and just save as a .m. Obviously, you don't have to do it this way. You can set up a new Word template from scratch if you want, but converting your existing one is a lot easier since it already has all the paragraph and character styles that you need. I'm just going to put that quickly in downloads. There we are. Great, so that's a .m, and the next step is to just go developer, macros, type your macro and create. I've actually got a version of this that I prepared earlier that I'm just going to open up to demonstrate. So yeah, as you can see, I've got a couple of macros here that I've already set up for this version of the doc. When you're creating it, make sure you select the actual template itself rather than some other location, such as on your computer. Obviously, for Author It Cloud or for Author It, whatever version of Author It you're using, to access the macro, it actually needs to be within the template. When you're on this screen and copying and pasting your macro in, you also want to make sure that you select template project and this document. In theory, you could select it under template project and a module, but if you save it under this document, you can have macros like this one. So I've set up two very simple macros here. The first one triggers automatically when Word documents open, and it's just a list of macros that I want to run when the Word document opens. And then I've got another very simple one here that turns the word Acme orange upon opening the document. And you'll see why in a moment why I've picked this one. So after you've done all that setup, your next step is to just put that, first of all, upload the, if you're in Author It Cloud, upload your .m to the files module. There we go. And then your next step is to either update your book or book templates or your publishing profile. In this particular library, I've set it up so that the Word template for the publishing profile is used. So that's what I'm going to update. Cool. New Word. And stretch my file type. So there we go. That's the macro one right in the middle. Yep, great. As easy as that. And then from here, we can pick a book and publish to New Word. Rather than publish right now and force you to wait through that, I'll download one that I prepared earlier and just quickly demonstrate that macro in action. If your organization's anything like ours, it probably has some fairly tight security controls that will kind of lock down what happens with macros a bit. So quite likely you're going to have to unblock the file. And if your security is really tight, you may need to chat to your IT team to make sure that you can actually run these macros. There we go. For me, I just need to unblock the file, open it up. That has occurred off screen. Here we go. And then as soon as I click enable content, the macro should run. First it'll hit that, run all these macros on opening document, and then it'll hit the one that says turn the word Acme orange. The word Acme does appear a lot in this document, being the Acme employee anthology, so it will take a moment. Damn, easy. Now, of course, for demonstration purposes, I made that a real simple macro, but your one doesn't have to be. It can be something like adjusting table sizes, adding labels, formatting caption text, whatever you want, right? You can do all of the things that you've done with the previous Word action macros in Legacy Word. Great, so that's it for macros, but we do have some additional options that we've added to New Word as well. It's not just macros. So for tables, we now have text direction, which does exactly what you see on the screen. It rotates your text. And we've also got vertical alignment for table cells, which obviously top, middle, bottom, just like you see there. As well as that, we now have full support for file object variables. So in 2025 R3, the current release, if you use a file object variable with new word, the file object that it prints, typically a picture, will always be the default for the library. Now it works the exact same as it does for legacy word or any other supported output format. The file object variable that it publishes will be whatever one is assigned to the appropriate object. So the topic, if that's the highest in the priority, the publishing profile, if that's highest in priority, etc. For author it on-premises customers, publishing your preferred fonts with new word or word to PDF has been and still is as simple as putting the font on the workstation or publishing server that's doing the publishing. Obviously in author it cloud, that's not an option. We control the publishing service. You can't go directly uploading fonts. So in the upcoming release, we've put a way to get around that. Essentially, we've made it so that new word and word to PDF can use fonts that you upload to the files module. For new word, that's going to help quite a bit with pagination calculations. So because our publishing server has access to your preferred fonts, when it's calculating how long the document will be and where each page will be, it'll be able to do that more accurately. For word to PDF, that's going to result in the PDF using your customized fonts or whatever fonts you upload to this location you see on screen instead of a fallback. So at the moment, let's say you have a proprietary font that we don't have access to because obviously it requires some special licensing. If you publish to word to PDF, then word to PDF will have to use a fallback because it can't access that font. Now you can just take the TTF files, go to the files module and upload them to the fonts folder. If that doesn't exist, you can just create it. And when you publish to word to PDF, bam, the PDF will have exactly the font that you need. Just a reminder, for our Author It Cloud customers, we are removing legacy word from Author It Cloud in 2026 R1, which you can expect sometime in the first quarter next year. So if you're still publishing to legacy word and haven't moved to new word or started moving to new word at this stage, definitely kick that process off now. We don't want you to get caught out.
Yeah, towards the end of R1, towards the end of first quarter. Not early. Yeah.
Cool. That is it for the new word stuff. Let's quickly check the Q&A, see if there's anything interesting. Will the recording be available to share with our teams? Absolutely. So not just with your team. So just like the What's New in New Word webinar, we put up a recording on our website that's publicly available. You can still go to that. Anyone can access that via YouTube or our website. We will do the same for this webinar, and you strongly encourage you to share that with anyone and everyone. All right, next is the Magellan updates in 2025 R4. So we're in 2025 R4, we've added a new option to let you control the speed of the rotator tiles on a Magellan website, or turn them off completely if that's what you prefer. It's a very simple option in the themeconfig.json file for those of you who actually set up and configure Magellan websites, and you can set the times to seconds or partial seconds if you want. So it could be 2.5 seconds if that's how long you want it to rotate to the next set, or you can set it to 0 to just have them static. As well as that change, we've also improved security and updated 2 of the components Magellan uses, Angular and PrimeMG. So the PrimeMG update in particular is one to pay attention to. PrimeMG has changed a lot in this version compared to the one that Magellan was using. So the files used by Magellan have also changed a lot. All of those changes are documented in the KC. So for a few releases now, we've had a section that says Magellan files updated in this release. So they're all there. If you're an organization that customizes Magellan quite heavily, for example, you use your own index.html file instead of the default one that ships with Magellan, you want to have a look at all those files and pay close attention to what's been added, removed, and updated. There are quite a few, so it's quite likely your customizations will need a bit of work. Everyone will also want to check the CSS changes in particular. So because of the PrimeMG update, by and large, the CSS rules, what they're doing in the CSS files in Magellan, the default ones, haven't changed, but the selectors have been updated. So, for example, before it might have been targeting PrimeMG cascade menu. Now it might be targeting PrimeMG tiered menu. And because of that, there's a good chance you might need to update some of your selectors in the themestyles.css file. We have documented what selectors have been changed to make that easier. So, once the release ships, you'll be able to check the KC and see, these are, the CSS rules and sections that I need to pay close attention to, and maybe look at my own theme styles one and do some updates. Right, that's the end of the Magellan section, fairly quick. Doesn't look like we have any new questions. Oh, well, no worries. All right, so now on to the author connection upgrade. This is the section of, we're starting with the sections which are more relevant to Author at Cloud than others, as I mentioned at the start. So in 2025 R4, we're offering a new way to open the author module. It's an alternative to the current RDP solution that you'll use to open author in Author at Cloud, and your authors. So we will be removing the RDP solution in 2026 R2, so a little while away yet, which I think you can expect mid to late Q2 next year. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Abe.
Yeah, no, that's around June.
Yeah. But until then, you'll be able to use both side by side. They'll run in parallel, and you can switch between them as frequently as you want. The new connection mode, it uses something called Amazon Workspaces applications to perform application streaming. As you might have been able to tell, I had to practice saying that sentence for this webinar a few times. It is quite the mouthful. Amazon Workspaces applications, they did used to be called AppStream 2.0. They changed the name recently. So if you've seen some of our communications talking about AppStream in the past, that's why, right? Hence the confusion there. It was very good timing for us, them doing that name change just before we announced this. So why this change? If you don't know what application streaming is, truthfully, it can be a little tricky to explain. It certainly took some time for me to wrap my head around it. And it's especially tricky in this context. You'll see why in a moment. Essentially, RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, it loads or gives you control of an entire Windows desktop. With application streaming, you're only loading a single application. Now, if you've been connecting to the author module in Author at Cloud for a while, that statement may be a little confusing because when you open it, you only see a single application. It looks like your application streaming, right? But that's because we hide, the rest of the desktop is still there. It just looks like it isn't because we hide it, right? Or restrict access to it. But it is still there. So with application streaming, all of that desktop in the background will not be present. Moving from RDP to application streaming has several advantages, which I'm sure you've been reading about on screen as I've been speaking. And the main areas are reliability, performance, and security. So literally what you see on the PowerPoint right now, which I've included so you can go back and read them later if you like. It's a managed service, which should reduce downtime in author not available instances. It will eliminate the need for frequent reboots and the manual troubleshooting that often plagues RDP. It launches just the author module instead of a full Windows desktop, like I mentioned. The browser version, when you open Author in your browser, you'll be able to have it on 2 separate screens, which I think is a really cool upgrade for browser users. And every user gets a dedicated instance, which should ensure consistent performance even during peak usage. From the security point of view, RDP is technically an attack vector, and this removes that. Now, the new way to connect, unfortunately, it does come with some downsides, and we want to be transparent about those. I will give a demo of this in a moment, and you'll notice you have a username and a password, both of which you need to copy and paste. This wasn't required in our earlier prototypes, and so there was no copy and paste of anything, and it was quite seamless, and we were very excited to announce it. I think we did initially. But unfortunately, we found a security flaw in that, and we're just going to release it. Obviously, with the sensitivity of data that you have in your libraries, security has to be a top concern. And so we had to pivot to a different solution. That said, we are working to remove those copy password and username pass requirements for 2026 R1. So that seamless experience is absolutely still our goal. As you'll see soon, there's also some, when you open up the author module, there's some icons at the top of the screen. Some of those are useful, others aren't. Unfortunately, we can't customize this to remove the not useful ones. Certainly, we'll be keeping an eye on this in case Amazon Workspace's applications changes that in the future, and we can have some customization. That said, most of these won't be a problem, right? Clicking the microphone or the camera just does nothing. Won't really impede your experience. But there is one which I think could cause some confusion, and that's the My Files icon. So when you click My Files, it opens up a temporary space to upload your files to, which sounds useful until you realize that the Files module in Author Cloud can't see it. So My Files has nothing to do with the Files module. You can upload files there, but Author can't see it. None of Author Cloud can see it. They can't access them. And as soon as you end your session, as soon as you disconnect, they're deleted. For that reason, we strongly recommend you don't use it at all because it just won't serve any particular function. All right, let's give a little demo. Just prepping some stuff off screen. All right, great. So we're in Author Cloud now in one of our RC environments. In 2025 R4, when you open up the Author module, you'll notice a message here saying you're using Author in legacy mode, and you can click here or even up here, I think, to move to the new experience. Then once you're in the new experience, you'll see a bunch of instructions about what to do. First, I'm going to demo opening it up in browser mode, though. So this is what I meant by copying a username and password. I've got a new tab here. Just need to copy it over. Please note these are not your Author Cloud username and password. So, I mean, I'm getting some suggestions here from 1Password for pre-saved account login details that I can use. Those won't work. You will need to copy and paste from here specifically. Cool. It'll ask me to paste in the password again. If it's still on your keyboard, that's clipboard rather, you can just hit paste. I'm just copying it again just to be safe. And we're in. Once you're in, this looks and feels and is a very similar experience to the old method of connecting, RDP. One thing I have noticed on the UI as I've floated around is it does feel more responsive, which is really nice. When I open a book, at least for me in the environments I work in, it takes about the same amount of time to open, but I know it's done it right. I'm not wondering whether I've clicked the book. I'm always aware that if that it has happened. It's quite responsive in that way. And as I scroll through things, it actually does scroll and immediately, and that's quite nice. In terms of the icons up here, I'll just give you a quick run through of what they all do. If you close the module, you can reopen it quite easily, significantly more easily than you can in the current mode, which is really nice. So that's all that does. And if you minimize Author accidentally or some books, you can click Windows to bring it back up. As I said, you don't need files. If you're using Chrome or Edge, you won't need to use Clipboard at all. You can just give the screen permission to access your clipboard directly. If you're using Firefox, you may need to use this since Firefox doesn't allow applications like these to access the clipboard at all. That's just not something they support. So you'll need to copy and paste content in here to give the Author module access to that clipboard. Microphone and camera do nothing. You're welcome to click them, but it won't adjust your experience at all. Preferences is just kind of some standard settings. I won't bore you by clicking through them in here, but it just lets you do things like go to dark mode and light mode. Full screen's actually quite nice. If you want, you can have a full screen experience, which makes this feel very similar to using Author on the desktop, which I think is great for those organizations who can't download the RDP file at the moment, or who maybe can't download the client application for Amazon Workspaces. Just shrink that. This one is probably my favorite, being able to go to dual monitor. I'll keep this on this screen for demonstration purposes, but or not. See if I can be clever about this. There we go. Bam. Obviously, when you're using this, you'll have this one off on one of your other monitors off screen. But yeah, now when you're using the author module in your browser, you can have two different windows open. And
then in case if you accidentally close it, the open windows in the other monitor or other window comes back in. They are not closed automatically.
Exactly.
Just
and this is just access to some specific keys. And profiles, just links to things like Amazon Workspaces documentation and stuff. Cool, that's it for the browser mode. Can I end session? There you go. I just ended that session that way out of habit, by the way. You're welcome to just close the window when you do it. All right, now let's try opening on desktop. The first step to opening on desktop will actually be downloading the Amazon Workspaces Applications client, which you do at this link. You should all be using Windows, so you'll need to download the Windows client. I have already done that, so I'm just going to click this button instead. Amazon will look for the Workspaces Applications client on my computer, and when it finds it, it'll open it up. There you go. Now, I didn't have to copy or paste any password in there because I'd already done it in the browser mode, but odds are you'll probably have to copy a password in at least. There we go. Had this a few times in the past. It'll often go from 0 to basically 100 very quickly, like some of my favorite action movies. So hopefully that shouldn't take too long. In the meantime, I can see if there's any questions that have come up I can answer.
There is one question around. Just a moment. One question around. Can you cover the copy paste limitation again? Which is a little unclear.
Oh, sure. So it just means you'll need to copy and paste from here. That's it. So when you're opening the author module in the browser or on your desktop, you'll need to copy and paste from here when prompted. I just wanted to make it clear that that username and that password is not the one you use to sign into Author at Cloud. I could imagine we will have instructions and a tooltip on the page to make that clear, but I personally could see how some people could validly get confused by that. So I just wanted to make sure people were clicking from here instead of, say, using their password manager to put in their normal username and password. In terms of how long that limitation is going to be around, we're aiming to get rid of that in 2026 R1 and just have it as a more seamless experience, as our first prototypes did before we found that unfortunate security flaw that we really had to plug for this release. Once you are open on the desktop module, it really is exactly the same as RDP from an experience point of view. You can have multiple windows open, you can drag and drop, etc., etc. Same comments about, for my personal experience so far, things seem to take about the same time to open. That said, I've only opened topics and stuff in demo libraries. I haven't done it in production libraries where topics can often be a lot more long and complex than just this. So I'll be really interested to get your feedback and see how it does, when you're talking a 5-page long topic with complex images and that sort of thing. But certainly I've noticed it's quite snappy and responsive, and when I click, I know it's performed the click, which is a really nice thing. All right, that's it for the demo. I'll just go through to the end of this section on Amazon Workspace's applications on the new connection mode, and then I'll answer some of those Q&A questions, just in case the answer comes up in these sections. So to use this new connection mode, the Amazon Workspace's applications, you will need some IT and security preparations. For the browser mode there, I've put nothing, and that actually will be true for most organizations. I did just find out this morning, if you have very, very strict security protocols in your organization, there might be some URLs that you'll need to whitelist. Just like these other requirements, I will put those URLs on our KC. But for most of you, probably won't even need to do that. If you want to connect to open the author module via your desktop, you will need to whitelist the client, the Amazon Workspace's applications client. You'll also need to review some network ports, specifically 443, 8433, and 53. Those are very common internet ports, so I would be surprised if they were closed, but maybe your IT team has some control over on them. Perhaps you're in a particularly sensitive field. Quick note, these will all be on the KC, provided on our Knowledge Center, so you can look them up there. We do also recommend that you provide your IT team with the following documentation links. They're documentation links from Amazon that contain quite a bit more detail, and they may be interested in those details. You will get a copy of these slides. We'll make these publicly available, and I do believe these links are actually already on our Knowledge Center under the release notes, where it talks about this upcoming change and what you need to do to prepare. In terms of installation requirements, browser, definitely nothing. For desktop, you'll need to download and install the Amazon Workspace's applications client for Windows. Okay, that's a mouthful, like I mentioned earlier, but you only need to do that once, right? That's not a step you need to perform several times, as you might with RDP. Okay, let's have a look at some of these questions. Will the 2 to 3 login prompts, one for Active Directory authentication, one for AppStream access, be removed? 2 to 3 login prompts seems a bit much time to click each time we log. Yeah, agreed. And as Abe has answered, it is underway to get rid of that. Certainly, we were all a little disappointed when we had to change our approach, because that security flaw I mentioned, I can't really go into too much details to. But that's still the end goal, really, is making that something seamless in one click, or as few clicks as possible. Is the username or password unique to that session? Pete says yes. Awesome, that's good to know. That's not actually something I knew, so thank you for asking that. And what is the max resolution supported for monitors? So Pete's answered there that we're still confirming that, but according to the documentation, it's 2 by 4K. I can tell you, might as well. I can tell you when you have Amazon Workspace's applications open, when you have the author module open, one of the options up top is actually to control the resolution. Okay, not sure what's happening there. Anyway, so at least if you want to manually pick your resolution, 256 by 1440 seems to be the largest option they offer, but you can pick to match your local display. Cool. Do all these changes being demoed only relate to the cloud version? Yes, they do, Alison. And I see Abe and Julie have provided some more specific answers. But yes, very, very fair question if you've only just popped in. We've covered the copy-paste limitation. Pete, how long do the sessions last?
Yet to be determined, sorry. We'll get back to you with the answer to that.
Yes.
There are a couple of timeouts. There's an idle timeout when you're not using it, which is a bit shorter, and then there's the full session timeout below that. So we'll figure that out and get back to you.
Cool. Yes. Yeah, I'll take a note to include that in our knowledge center. Cool. Any questions in review? Can you post these links in the... someone has asked if I can post the links in the Q&A section here, so you can forward it out to our IT teams. I can actually do one better. You can forward them out right now if you like. Might as well just demonstrate this. So you will get a copy of these slides, which will have those links obviously on the slide. Yes. But if you are really impatient and you don't want to wait to the end of the session to send them out, it's the exact same links you'll find here in the Author Cloud release notes under the coming in 2024 R4, 2025 R4 enhancements to opening author topic. So yeah, much of that information is actually contained here. Awesome. On to the translation endpoints for the AIT API. I'll just quickly shrink Teams again so I can see my presenting notes. There we are. So for those of you who don't know, the AIT API is Author Cloud's public REST API. It allows direct interaction with an Author Cloud library or database. It's been used for a long time to automate publishing jobs. So for organizations that don't want to manually publish, but want to publish regularly in some sort of automated fashion, they've been using the AIT API to do that. And in the 2025 R1 release of Author Cloud, we expanded it to allow the automatic export, upload, and import of translation jobs, or to set up translation automation between Author and an external system. And some of our third parties are already kind of using this to create applications that let you do that. So the first set of those endpoints were released in R1, and then in the upcoming release, 2025 R4, we've expanded them to capture most scenarios. So now in the next release of Author, you'll be pretty much able to do everything related to translation jobs with the AIT API. For those of you who are more technical or have good API knowledge, or particularly knowledge of the AIT API, these specific improvements are new endpoints to retrieve the logs for a translation job, a new endpoint to update a translation job's status. So for example, to take it from draft import to import, or ready for import or something like that. Changes to the import endpoint to allow separate uploads and imports. So previously that had to be completed as a single step. It can now be done as a single step or as two separate steps. Changes to the import endpoint to allow draft imports. So draft imports are now possible. And also some other minor changes, for example, updates to certain schemas and that sort of thing. If you're interested in the specific updates, the AIT API has its own set of release notes that we keep on a separate page, authorit.com/devdocs. When 2025 R4 is released, you're quite welcome to read them there. Okay, that's actually it for today's webinar. Let's see if we've had any new questions in the interim.
Not anything new. There's nothing in review.
Cool. Okay, great. Looks like we are done then. Thank you for joining, everyone. If you do think of more questions, after the webinar, you're quite welcome to email us. We've got the Author-It community page that you can post in. You can contact support@authorit.com, or if it's something directly related to something I've said or in the KC, you're quite welcome to use the feedback button on our Knowledge Center or email jamie.simmons@authorit.com. As we mentioned, this recording, we'll upload this recording shortly onto our website and send you a copy. So you're welcome to forward that on to whoever you like, and we'll give you a copy of the PowerPoint slides. Thanks for attending, and see you at the next one.
Thank you, guys. See ya.